intensity song right off the starting line for us, so we don't even sneak in this year. We're right in your faces right away. At this point, I just want to take a moment to introduce the staff so we can, because they'll be doing some different parts of this thing, and so you're familiar with it. First, oh, there you guys are. First, I want to introduce Scott Kreitzer. He's our snare tech. He runs the snare line and cleans them and does all the good things. Scott's a former marching member of the Corps. Also, 2 years ago, he was the individuals champion at DCI, solo and ensemble. Next over here we have Mark Churchill, otherwise known as Venus. He is the tenor tech. He works the tenor line. Mark, again, is a former marching member. As of last year, and one of the best tenor sections ever to hit the field within the last 2 or 3 years. Mark does the tenor section for us. Mark Churchill. Finally, Brian Mason over here runs the front ensemble and works these gentlemen. Again, Brian's a former marching member and very multi-talented individual. He marched both in the pit and played tenors for us when he marched. Brian not only works with the Cavaliers, but he also works with the Skyriders, working their front ensemble. So Brian kind of shares his summers running around the country. Brian Mason. Okay, at this point, we want to just start giving you the basic, our warm-up exercises and our routines that we use to first get ourselves going in the morning. And we do these every day, prepare for shows. Every time before we start playing music, we need to warm up and get our hands going and keep our minds in shape. And we're going to start with that right now. First thing we do is single hand exercises with taps. And we're going to do single hands on both hands and do things with not only volume, we'll change the volume levels, we'll change dynamics, we'll also do accent and tap relationships. And it's kind of a multitude of different things, always just using single hand. trying to do. We're just loosening hands, getting the hand motion moving, make sure their accent height taps are all the same.
Everything we talked about, right?
Okay, we're going to do this, basically the same kind of an exercise, only we're going to put a little twist to it. The center snare will change tempo during the exercise. Listening, 16, straight. Got the hands started, and now we wanted to get the ears in tune, so they were hearing and they're feeling pulse as a group. So what we did was we just took it, and the center snare drummer will take the tempo pulse and move it up or down, depending on what he feels the group necessarily needs, and it's up to the group to hang with him. Next, we're going to go into double beats, where we put, starting basically developing the roll idea, where we're actually bouncing the notes and moving them on both hands. We do an exercise that incorporates 1, 2, and 3 beats. So the tap, a double, and then a triple. Da-da-da. Okay? 12, 13. Great. Again, we try to do as much dynamic work in all of our exercises because we're really required these days in modern drum corps to really, pay attention to phrasing and musicality, not just pound a bunch of notes. So we really worked hard this year to make sure that they're phrasing everything. They can shape the part together. The stick heights move up and down together, and we try to play more musical at all times. Next, I want to do just an accent pattern. It'll be in 6/8, and basically all they're doing is moving the accent, and again, making sure their inner beats or the low notes are hanging together, and then the stick height rise on the accents, and we'll move the accent around. Triplet accent. Starts with the check. Starts with the check. moving on, we'll now get into some of the roll development where they're actually playing roles in the exercise. This exercise incorporates a bar of 2/4 time, or time signature 2/4, and the second bar will be in 6/8. So what we're doing is taking your typical drag exercise just one step further, where we have to move from duple meter to triple meter in our show on a given bar. So we incorporated the exercise to do that. So every other bar's in a different time signature. Duple, triple. Next we'll play basically just a triplet roll, a little bit more extended to make sure that they're playing even and getting a good quality of sound on the drums all the way through the exercise. So basically we've broken it down into just the drags. Now we'll extend it out a little bit and play triplet rolls, and just mainly searching for quality of sound across the line, so I don't have peaks and valleys within individual drummers and they're tuning their ears into what's happening. Okay? Make sense? So they work that in this exercise. Instead of playing triplet rolls, those guys can roll from here to eternity. So they're going to work on their bow-rod technique. And we'll explain that a little bit more in detail as we get into the show. Normally we would take that and play that for a little bit while, you know, we change dynamics, we bring it down soft, we play it loud. They have a couple, the snares have a couple pair of sticks that they play with in the show. We work it with both pairs of sticks because they use both pairs in this kind of a context. But basically that's, you know, straight triplet rolls. And we try not to get too fancy with our exercises. We try to just use them for a specific purpose in the warm-up. So we're not trying to set new standards of how we're going to get with the exercise. We're just doing the basics, making sure that they play. These gentlemen are required to play perfectly all the time. So there's no point in our warm-up where they will be going dirty on you because they'll be stopped. So they always are used to hearing clean or perfectly together sounds almost all the time. Next, where am I? My speech. Let's do next one we're doing incorporates basic flam technique. We're just trying to drop in the flams and snares will play flams on both hands, and we move it. It's a timing exercise. It's a grace note exercise, so they get used to holding the grace note down and good technique off of that. The bass drum use this for a timing thing on their part because they're going to move 16th notes on the bass drums up and down and all around and in between. So it serves a multitude of functions. Tenors are using it for double stops, and the bass drums are using it for 16th note timing. So there's three different things happening within the same exercise, but each group is accomplishing something that they need to continually work on. Okay, next we'll play our single exercise. Most of you guys probably have some sort of a six couplet exercise that you work, and obviously we do too. Cavalier single. Go up front. Singles in the show, we do a lot of 30-second note singles where we're doing single nines. So think of 16th notes, 1 E and a 2. We'll do 1 E and 2. So it's basically a double stroke roll, only we're going to do it single-handed instead of rolling. Okay? More CD. Set. Gives you the singles, the single taps, the double beats, the triplets, accents, we do some timing. So everything is just relating to pulling them together and thinking as one single entity. At this time I'd like to turn it over to Brian Mason, and he'll do some things with the front ensemble. And they have obviously a little bit different approach to what they're doing, but still some of the same concepts apply to what they're going to play. Drums down, relax.
Basically, when we start to warm up the keyboards in the morning, first of all, we get up and we got to set up all these racks. You know, obviously you check that out. We kind of adopted this little setup thing a few years ago, and it's worked for us and we've kept it. So what we're trying to develop here is a multi-percussion technique with all the players in the ensemble. We don't just have people playing marimba the whole show or bells the whole show. Everybody has their own little setup, and so we can try to develop more multi-percussionist players as is growing in the college repertoire and stuff like that to make you a more talented or a more versatile player. So basically, when we get everything set up finally, we get out and we do eights. We warm up 8 on a hand, and just as the battery does also, we play some listening games and stuff because we have to listen back and match up our sounds with everything that's coming behind us. So we tend to do a little bit more of the listening thing right away. And but we are working on the basic stroke, the full wrist stroke, and so we just come out and we work in some of the different key signatures. This is going to be our one-hand exercise, 8 on a hand. We'll just do a few reps of it, and then we'll move on. With the battery, we're working more with the wrist and getting the legato technique and getting the controlled, uniform look. But with the mallet instruments, about the only way to get the mallet sound projected up is a lot of times to have big, heavy, hard mallets. And sometimes that tends to damage the instrument. So we work on our power stroke and we incorporate a little bit of arm with it so we can have some weight. We use the bigger, oversized mallets to get some tone out of the instruments. So it will project. And also, when we do this one-hand, when we're doing our one-hand exercise, it gives our timpani player a chance to tune the drums up and get his gauges set, and so we can get going after that. What key does it stop? B? Yeah, let's go through B. And just check out some of the strokes, how we're getting the power, and some of the listening techniques that we have to do 20 yards apart. Continues through all 12 keys and stuff like that, but we're going to go ahead and move on. Another exercise, once we get relaxed and get our ears open, is an exercise there's a George Hamilton Green exercise, he was a famous xylophone player a long time ago. You might have heard of him or not, but basically we work in a scale pattern. We go from the first degree of the scale to the fifth, back down, and then we go from the 5th to the 9th and work that a little bit and back down. I'm sure you've heard a lot of players, horn players and stuff like that maybe doing this. Let's do this in C. they're pretty stale as far as phrasing goes. We're just trying to get our heads in the game and getting our wrists going and stuff like that. And so the next exercise we'll start to get a little phrasing involved. We call it bossa nova, and we're still just working the one-hand technique, and we're working on our double stops because when we're playing our exercise and stuff, playing our music in the show, a lot of times we do play double stops, and we don't want to be flamming. All right. If we're flamming, that's going to cause a lot of problems across the ensemble as well as front to back. So we're working phrasing through our one-handed technique. This is bossa nova. That's where we start to work our phrasing in. We start to get our little body motion happening with that, because that's just as important as playing the notes for us in this idiom. The next thing we're going to do that really pushes our phrasing abilities is an exercise we call add-on. All right? We start with a couple counts of subito or fortissimo, 16th notes, and then all of a sudden we're subito piano, and then we go up 3 notes of the scale, come back down, 4, 5, 6, and so on, and then we work it in a descending pattern as well. So we're really working on our phrasing, the way we look, the way we present ourselves, and this is called add-on. Most of the exercise has been scalar. We've been working on basically major scales and patterns like that. The last exercise we're going to do for you before we play a little section of the show it's a chromatic exercise, and it's an exercise we put together from a bunch of different sources. I don't know if any of you have heard of Bob Becker as a xylophone virtuoso. And the first part of the exercise just takes a chromatic scale, which would consist of 12 notes. So you could either think of it as 3 counts of 16th notes or 4 counts of triplets. And so that's what we do. That's how we present it. The first part of the exercise, we go up in a 16th note accent pattern, then we do it in a triplet accent pattern. And then the next part of the exercise, we got from a world-renowned marimbist, Keiko Abe, and out of the George Hamlin Green book, and we move one hand chromatically up the scale, and we move the other hand chromatically down the scale. And then the last part is the weirdest part. We move each hand back in chromatically, so that's a brain teaser there. So we have to work on our spatial awareness. Okay, so all the time you can't look at every note that you're going to hit. Sometimes it goes by so fast. You have large intervals, like if you're playing contemporary 4-mallet pieces and stuff like that. You You just kind of got to know where the notes are sometimes. And so we work on that where we focus into the middle of the keyboard and we just get comfortable with moving our hands right back in until we get back to the root pitch. Let's do Bob Abe. When the full ensemble is playing, just kind of check around and check these guys out. Some of the techniques that they're using, all the different things that they're hitting. You know, it's really fun. You could just sit there and focus in on one player the whole show. I mean, it's really interesting and challenging to hear some of the sounds coming out of our little pods, as we call them. And so as you're listening, let your eyes move around and check some of this stuff out. We're going to play cornerstone. Yeah, and just show you some of the phrasing techniques that we plug in after we do all our warm-ups and stuff. Some of the phrasing and exercise things that are inherent in our show and that we're working for, and how they actually affect things that we're playing. Let's do right on. 1, 2, 1. Cavaliers Drumline.
All right, starting with that, we'll bring in the leg drums into that section now to give you just how the whole thing is tied together. I first wanted to tell you about this front ensemble. We are really privileged to have these gentlemen in this group. Last year at the GCI Solo and Ensemble Competition, they won it. And they not only won it, they scored a perfect 100. And we're just fortunate to have most of them back. And on top of that, our timpanist, Rel Lepard, won the timpani individuals also. So we have probably one of the best timpani players in the country, and definitely one of the best pits in the country. It's just a pleasure working with you. It's so easy to be able to throw anything at them, and it's a challenge, and they rise to the occasion. We are going to continue with a full group now, playing that section again in our second production in our show called Cornish Dances by Malcolm Arnold. We have basically a little feature that we do, and it's not a smash and blast. It's more of a very melodic and very touch type of solo here. And before we get it, I want to just start with the bass drums, and this is where they use their Boron technique, an Irish hand drumming technique. And we just felt it was very apropos for what we're doing in this, and it gives us a brand new color that really hasn't been explored on the marching field before. And we'd like to start with you guys. Go ahead. How you guys do? playing, the other hand is basically just muffling the head. And it not only shows their abilities, but it just, when you hear the whole piece, just listen to how this sets into the mood of the piece. Instead of hitting bass drums really hard or something different, this sound just works so nice. And when we heard it and put it in, it just made the whole thing come together. Top of recording from the mid end. Set. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Different approach to a solo, but boy, it just works great, and we're getting rave reviews on it, so I think we'll keep it. Let's move on. We'll start the same place again so you get to hear that again, and we'll move into the English dances. Again, another Malcolm Arnold production, and we just tie the two pieces together, and in between some of that you'll hear a little bit of silence, which is basically the brass taking over for us, and we don't really jump on top of each other all the time. We let them have some space in the show, and we take our space in the show, and then we try to work together to form a real nice musical product. So there's a little section in here where the horns take it, and we'll play through that. We have, where's Jeff at? You don't have your monster. Okay. Here we go. Same place. Moving on in through English dances to the end of English dances. One, two, 1, 2, 3, real nice with the horns. Now we want to move into the ending of the show, which always we save a lot of the most creative and, well, I guess show the stuff for the end. And this year we're doing Peterloo by Malcolm Arnold, and it is quite a production. It's about 6 minutes long. There is a little bit of everything in this piece, and really just watch, I guess, is the best way to describe it. I just want to show Fred, turn on your little gizmo there. And, Peterloo Overture starts with a concert snare drum. And we just thought it'd be nice to get that sound out on the field. So we've actually put a snare unit in the bass drums this year to give us that concert sound. So it's kind of rough on the marching snares because they're tuned so high to really get a true sound of a real concert snare drum and get it out of the pit. A lot of the times you have to create things from within, and it just was a nice sound to move it out on the field. Fred, just play your part right there. Again, bringing some unique sounds to the field. And, it just works really nice in the show. I'll start at Peterloo. We're going to start at might be a few things that you don't quite understand, or just give us some ideas of have some questions about certain things.
Yeah. How long do you practice?
How long do we practice? It's pretty much dependent on our schedule for the day. For example, today we arrived at the school at 7 o'clock this morning, so they basically were on the bus all night. And normally we'll try to give them a few hours of sleep, so we never really started rehearsal today till noon. On the average, we try to get 5 or 6 hours in on the road. Sometimes we can stretch a little longer if we don't have a show that night. Right now on first floor, we're doing a show about every night or every other night. So we'll be on an average about 5 to 6 hours a day. Anybody else? Oh, come on, there's got to be something here. Okay, then let me talk to you about it. Basically, our age groups are, I guess on a core this size, 16 through 21. We can march students up to starting at 14 years old. Most of this group is college age. There's I think maybe 4 or 5 kids that have either just graduated high school or that are still in high school. I think our youngest. He's a junior in high school. So we have pretty much the whole spectrum here, and again, it's a lot of work involved, a lot of dedication involved. What I highly recommend is getting involved in it, just first for the chop building. These players have learned how to do quite a number of things, and most of them on any given day can blow my doors off any time. And it's just a nice thing to first get their chops in order. A lot of these gentlemen will go on to be college music majors, and they already have a very good head start because they already have the hands happening. They get a good understanding of the musical concepts that we try to do. They also really strive to make sure that they're, playing as a group. Just the discipline involved with playing together, and knowing what it takes to play music as close to perfect as they can. As far as the technique are involved with their hands. When you see the show, you folks going to the show now? Okay, that's great. You'll get to see all this in motion. It's almost a treat for them to stand and play it for you because they really do not stand around and play any of this. The leg drums are constantly on the move in the show and also doing some very dangerous moves on top of it and still performing it at that level. So they're required to do that. It's a real mental test, basically, for them every given night that they perform the show. And we're working towards really trying to make it perfected as soon as possible. And on the drum and bugle corps, even though we play the same show, it is constantly evolving and changing. These might not be the notes that you'll see in a week. There's obviously editing being involved, changing things around to make it work better, or to make it more exciting. They've just gone through a massive drill change in the closer that has, what they've done last week, they are now doing completely different this week. So maybe the notes don't change, but where they're placed on the field and what they're required to do changes on every day. There's some sort of a change that they need to make, not only make, but perform that night at the same caliber of all the other stuff that they've been playing. Yeah.
It's a fire extinguisher.
It's a fire extinguisher. We have a few toys that we just didn't bring over here because they're massive and they're big, and we have in the ending of the show, and that can be used quite a bit in the show. It's a different color. We just go through some different sounds to cut first through the core so you can hear it, and at the end of the show we use some big giant bell plates to make almost church bell sounds. Bring that through. So that's basically a fire extinguisher. And most of the stuff, there's unique things all the way across the pod. Spokes. Play the spokes. So we just try to get these different sounds out there. Anybody else? Okay, at this point then, since nobody's really talking, I'd like to I'm going to have them play the street beat for you, just to show you some of the fun that they have. They march probably a dozen parades through the course of the summer, and this is pretty much wrote within the line. It's a Dave Weckl tune called Spur of the Moment, and we use it for our street beats and our cadences, and they just get a whole lot of fun out of it. It's pretty fun. We're pretty much locked into our contemporary band literature, but for something like this, just let them loosen their hair a little bit and do something in a little bit different vein. White.